Hi everyone and welcome to today's episode. My name is Eziabo Osele and I am one of the founding partners of the Energy Africa. Sitting with me today at the Energy Africa Café is one of the most inspiring voices in Africa's clean energy movement, Victor Okinda, a seasoned renewable energy expert and sustainable development leader who has spent over a decade tackling one of the continent's most ambitious missions. I'm sure you guys are all wondering what is it exactly? Says eradicating or ending energy poverty across sub-Saharan Africa. And I will say from my own perspective that this is actually a most needed cause because if we want to scale as an African, we need to know how we can unlock socio-economic growth and human potential using energy as a tool. But before I dive too deep into our conversation, I would like to warmly welcome Victor. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on the show today. I'm looking forward to talking and hopefully inspiring the younger generation.
Thank you. It is so nice to have you. How has it been like for you this month? Professionally, how has it been like for you?
And it's never quite a smooth journey. It's had challenges, it's had upsides, but generally I'd say, the fact that it's been, very mission driven, very focused on a very huge and important challenge, it's helped to, of course, keep me focused and driven. Yeah, I feel like in a lot of times, that pillar or that reflection on the mission is what helps and makes, pushing through doable. But generally, I'd say very, very positive.
So I can't go into our conversation without speaking about where it all began, your journey all began. Victor holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from University of Nairobi, and this has grounded his expertise in local contexts. He's completing his second master's in energy policy and climate in the Johns Hopkins University. And this course or this program has deepened his understanding in global policies. I want to stretch that again, global policies and financial mechanism in accelerating energy transition. Okay, Victor, you have a strong professional experience in engineering and the deployment of renewable energy technologies in Africa. And looking at your academic foundation, which is Electrical and Electronics Engineering in University of Nairobi, why did you choose this professional path within Africa? And what was that defining moment you're like, I guess this is where I want to be?
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting because I didn't have one, light bulb moment or one defining point in time when it all became clear. To give you this backstory a little, started my career in oil and gas, basically installing flow meters for measuring oil in oil pipelines, oil depots, and whatnot. And then I transitioned to go do my master's in electrical engineering. And at that point, I was looking for hard problems to solve. And one of the interesting issues that were kind of emergent at that point was the issue of hybridization. How do you, well, not hybridization per se, but was the issue of cost of, renewables. And one of the theories then was that you could tackle this through hybridization. So an emergent tough problem at that point was optimally sizing a resource given, because the price of batteries, the price of solar panels, the price of wind turbines had not yet started to come down the way they've come down. So the trend was clear, but it was not still at the level where they are today, where, some of these decisions are obvious. So I took on this challenge, this optimization problem, and that became the thesis topic for my master's degree. And when I finished that, I took it on with an academic mindset. But when I finished that, I had kind of something had piqued in me and I wanted to try and do this in real life. An opportunity opened up, a company that I hadn't had that much of. Turns out it's because I was only going to be employee number 2. But it was an interesting opportunity to go and actually build renewable energy power plants. And that is how I got into the sector. Yeah.
Mm. It's very interesting when you said you pivoted from the oil and gas industry to the renewable energy sector. And now deploying also renewable energy technologies, you've held mega projects. That means huge projects that are able to change the lives of people. So what has been your experience in scaling grid connected projects, mega projects in Africa? And how did you navigate these challenges, handling different stakeholders from technical and from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, amazing question. And the one thing I didn't point out, so in the early part of my career, when I just got into renewables, I was actually building the power plants, working at the project level, doing one project after another. In the latter years or in more recent times, I'm more of working at the program level, setting up ecosystem level initiatives that can basically help advance or help accelerate, the growth of energy access and eradication of energy poverty. Now, back to your question, what I've realized is that across both types of work, the human element, the most challenging part of the job. So in my first, work doing large scale projects, for instance, utility scale projects, the engineering side was kind of straightforward. There are ways to do these things. There's a way if you want to build a solar plant, there's a sequence of steps you take. There are studies that you do. The terms of references for these studies are pretty well defined. It's something that you can follow a roadmap and, get to the end result. The same is true even when it comes to financing, whether it's project finance or whatever. There's a sequence of, activities, right, documents that have to be drafted and agreed to. And all that is kind of, to some degree, straightforward. But when it comes to the human element, I think that is one of the most, I would say, elements to large-scale infrastructure projects that is very difficult to master, but is extremely important. So I'll give you a story. I once developed this project where we had to acquire land from more than 400 landowners. And, this is in an area where we have, very deep sensitivities around land. Our company is still new. Remember, I was employee number 2. We don't have systems for this. So beyond just, okay, fine, can we create a compensation matrix, or can we create a database to advise the livelihoods, a restoration plan and compensation, etc. The real issue here was getting buy-in from the 400 plus landowners and the wider community. To do that, it involves a lot of stakeholder engagement. It involves, talking to and understanding what the community is saying and listening and then implementing that, and then being very honest with the community, managing their expectations, and being truthful at the end of it. So that's the one thing I can say doing projects across both spectrums has taught me. The human element is important. Quite frankly, is usually the reason why we do these things, but it's very important if you're thinking of scaling projects. So whether that is from the point of view of just getting buy-in, or if it's from the point of view of designing fit-for-purpose energy poverty eradication schemes.
But now looking at it in terms of the challenges, the technical point of view, we want to deploy this, but the financial point of view, we can't afford it. How were you able to balance it in based on the work that you do?
That's really interesting because a lot of on the development side, a lot of the challenges I've faced have revolved around, cost. So whether it's finding the most optimal way to do something, value engineering, optimizing costs for whatever reason, that has always come down as an important element in a lot of the work I do. There's a good example I want to give on how we've worked to bring down cost in the past. So this is not always possible, but essentially I would say when faced with this problem, you want to do X, it costs Y, and Y is more than the money you have. There's always an element of, going back the drawing board, redesigning, but sometimes it could also be as simple as, optimizing some of your processes. I have an example here for a program that I helped develop here at the Global Energy Alliance. The program is known as DAT, or Demand Aggregation for Renewable Technologies. Essentially, what this program was set up to do was to help bring down the upfront cost of developing energy projects, especially, small, mini grids and whatnot. And it does that, so essentially solving the cost problem for developers, primarily by optimizing for procurement. Yeah, I'm happy to dive deeper into that if it's of interest.
Yeah, the audience will be interested in knowing in terms of real life examples. For those that are listening, that is program that was employed into please correct me if I'm wrong, the Nigerian space in accelerating the growth of renewable energy technologies to ensure that it is accessible and affordable for developers. Is that right? Like in terms of the mission?
Yes, that is correct. We piloted this in Nigeria. Nigeria is still the largest market for the DAT program, but it is currently in the process of scaling up beyond Nigeria. So it's going to move into other countries outside Nigeria.
So, based on real life scenarios, can you give like real life examples of how that has been deployed in Nigeria and what solution was he able to solve in terms of the impact of the real users?
Yeah, definitely. So the genesis of the program was looking at the cost of electricity from mini grids. So, there's about 500 and something million, people who have, no access to electricity. And in that group, it could actually be higher. I've not checked the statistics recently, but in that group, about half of them would be best reached through mini grids. Now, the challenge usually is that this demographic is in rural and sometimes inaccessible locations, usually are not well off to start with. And yet, when you build a mini grid, the electricity coming from that mini grid tends to be more expensive than, electricity from the main grid. There are lots of other reasons, why there's a difference, including subsidies on the main grid that are not on the mini grid side. But our immediate challenge was to try and bring down that cost. We wanted to make sure that in a far off community somewhere would not be paying more for electricity than, a banker in Lagos, for example. And to solve that, and there are very many ways to solve these kinds of problems. But one of the levers that we decided to work with to bring down cost was to try and address the upfront cost problem. Here, I'll give you an example. So imagine you're a small developer in Nigeria, you want to build a mini grid. So number one, when you want to buy your equipment locally, so you want to buy your solar panels, so you want to buy your batteries, etc. So 3 years ago, when we were starting this, we did a survey and we found out that, small local developers were paying sometimes up to 4 times the global average price of something. That obviously means that the end cost, of electricity from that mini grid will be high. When they want to try to finance this project, you go to your bank, you're like, I have this mini grid project, I want to go and build it. Could you write me a loan for this much? The local banks at that time were, I'd say, scared to lend money to them. You go to the bank, you want to build a mini grid, they're asking for, your title deed to your, they want you to basically put up your house as security. So these were serious bottlenecks that were holding the sector back. And how we designed the DAT program was so that we could take a market approach to solving this. We realized, number one, the small developer could not access the international market and get a good price from that market because they were buying in a very small scale. So the solution to that, and this is the aggregation part of that, we said, hey, why don't you guys come together, bundle your orders together, and then we can make, these orders. And instead of a small 50 kilowatt order, we can make a 2 megawatt order. There'll be huge cost savings in doing that. The second thing we did was to provide a debt facility, a working capital debt facility that would kind of serve as an example to other banks, to local banks, so that, progressively over time, there can be more activity in terms of lending for the sector. So this combination of these two things, and of course we worked with partners, Odyssey Energy Solutions and Olon. Olon is a Nigerian impact investor. This combination resulted in, tremendous success. In our early rounds, I think we, at some point, were seeing cost savings of up to 30%. And ultimately, the market also adjusted. So today, any local developer, even if you're not using the program that we set up, you're not seeing the prices that, there 4 years ago. And we're immensely proud that we've helped bring, we've played our part in bringing the cost down. Some of this is trickling down to the end user, but I'll not pretend that we are there yet. So there's still a lot of work to do to ensure that ultimately the tariffs paid by the, villagers served by mini grids is, where it should be.
Yeah, from when you were talking about it, you said something about how that as a model was going to improve the need to access capital from smaller banks or from local banks in that particular country or region. Has this model, like based on the implementation of that, has this model actually improved the access to funds from local banks so far?
Yeah, I think it has. It's done two things. So one, it's helped developers to prepare and get ready to receive financing. Because the way the lending side of this was run was not like a donor thing. It was not like a grant. So you had to, provide the right documentation. You had to go through the appropriate diligence steps. And, this was processed like any facility would be processed at a commercial bank. And that was intentional. It was so that, would get exposure to the, developers would get exposure to the processes and would understand what it takes to finance a project. And we've seen a lot of developers raise financing outside of that after this. On the bank side, we've also seen quite a lot of positive developments. The financing model used by that was quite new at that point, and we've seen, a number of banks develop similar structures where, instead of asking a developer for the title to their house, there are more creative ways to collateralize, it's money starting to flow. And again, it's still not where it needs to be. A lot needs to happen. And there's a lot of good progress as well. So outside of that, outside of local banks, we have Mission 300 by the World Bank and the FDB.
Yeah.
That's catalyzing a lot of other positive developments in the space.
I would say one take home from what you just said right now, the use of how financial models TGM is evolving with time in order for us to scale accessibility in clean energy in terms of what is the best instrument to use in a particular scenario in deploying whatever technology will solve the energy crisis in that particular area. But it would be interesting to also hear from your own perspective, like what financial instrument makes you most excited in especially in discussing local financial institutions on investing in clean energy.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So, if we're talking about the spectrum of, from grants, equity, all the way to, the different types of debt available, I think what excites me most is seeing equity flow in, because it is really the it is the mark of approval. It is people putting their money where their mouth is. It is people saying we're in this for the long run. And I think it's one of the strongest signals for, positive developments in the sector. Unfortunately, I feel there's still not enough equity flowing into all the different energy service companies in the space, be it mini grid developers, be it, solar home system distributors, whatever it is, PUE companies. There's still just not enough equity flowing in. And because that is the highest, let me say that's the most tolerant to risk. It's the one that says we are in here for the long run and we believe in this story. But that aside, I still think the whole spectrum of funding instruments will be needed. There are situations where grants, whether these are capex grants, are very much needed. There are situations where, things like results-based financing work better. Then obviously there's space and a lot of room for commercial investment, both equity and debt. Yeah. So I'd say there's enough space and there are targeted things that the various instruments are better suited for. But in terms of what gives me joy, anytime I read an article and, Husk Power raised this much money or Heaven Hill raised this much money, such things make me happy because they signal a belief or faith in the solutions we are trying to deploy.
That's nice to hear, like to see, like based on your own experience and knowledge, the instrument that can be used in scaling clean energy in different scenarios, because there's no one fits all, I would say, because different instrument for different issues or problem or scenarios, I would say. But to just dive a bit out of the context of what we're discussing, I just want to, like, this is more a fun question. It's fun, not too serious. So just please give me the audience. If you are in a roundtable discussion with historical leaders in different energy space globally, who would you want at the table based on your own experience, or based on your own career, or based on where you are right now? And what energy related topics would you want to be discussed on that table?
Wow, that's a very hard one. So let me see if I got you right. So I'm on a roundtable discussing energy.
Yeah.
So who would I want on the table with me?
Yes.
Okay, bear with me for a minute here. I feel like there is a generation of African leaders, from Mandela to Nkrumah, who inspired action in a different way. I wasn't born. I read about all these guys while I was around in Mandela. I was alive. Like Kwame Nkrumah, I wasn't born. I read about this in history books. But I feel that there was a time when, people could speak to the urgency of some of these problems and they could carry reason through and be understood and be followed. I think that is a spirit that our leaders of today should be able to do. I mean, energy poverty is serious. It is it is poverty basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to develop this continent is to solve that. I would almost say, if I was on that round table, I would wish to be sitting with the Nkrumahs of tomorrow, the Mandelas of tomorrow, who can speak directly and with passion about this particular issue. It's an issue that takes local context that has to be solved with local participation, but it is an issue of global concern. So that's the kind of so maybe some of those leaders that I'm thinking about hypothetically in my head are still in school today. So in a way, it's a call to the new generation of leaders to think deeply about these problems and think about how we can solve these problems ourselves, as Africans.
So, based on your answers, that makes me bring up this topic of when we're talking about leaders and the policies they put in place to ensure policy fits or policy adds value. I don't know if that is the right word to use, but the right policy is being used with the right
Exactly.
technology, I guess. I'm short of words. So
It is the
please.
right words because, in a way, yeah, in a way, if you have the wrong policy, then you discourage investment. So you are not adding value,
Mm,
you're taking away value. So it is the right word to use. I would say the right policy is not, there's usually not a single correct answer to this because it needs to appreciate context for it to work right.
yeah.
But I would say there are certain things, and now I'm putting back my developer hat on, and I'm thinking, okay, fine. If you are in a position of authority, what sorts of policy or regulatory changes, would help? And the first thing is, we need to improve, and this is across the continent. There are places in the continent that get this right. But by and large, for most of our countries, this is still a challenge. So first is, just the speed and clarity of permitting.
Mm,
Sometimes a developer wants to do something and they need 20 different licenses from 10 different government offices with very unclear requirements and unclear timelines. This has always been a huge bottleneck. We've seen in other jurisdictions like a one-stop shop for developing energy projects. You go to one place and you get all your permitting from one place. All the requirements are clear and things are straightforward. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is stability and transparency. It is very bad for an investor or even a developer to have to, recalibrate a market every single time because they don't know if, this is going to change or what you said yesterday has already been repealed today. Like that stability, policies, laws, regulations, whatever it is, it helps a lot. And this is, whether it's tax, whether it's, investment, whether it's, permitting decisions, etc. Having that stability, some form of permanence, knowing that for the next 5 years, this is the regime. This is what we need to do to get this permit. These are the requirements. This is the tax rate. Knowing that and knowing that it's not going to change abruptly is super critical. And, I'm trying to just give examples for things that are in government's control. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
There are a lot of other things, but, as simple as those two, directly in a government's control. And if you ask me, and maybe I'm being too simplistic, quite easy to implement.
This is nice. It's just interesting how we've talked about the technical aspect, the financial aspect, and the political aspect, regulatory aspect, which is very vital or important. But taking a step back as a young professional who is just looking up to you right now, I'm like, I need to know about technical aspect, financial aspect, and political aspect. What advice will you have for me if I want to begin my career? Because there are two different spaces within the sector. So what advice will you have for me if I want to begin my career with this in this space?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't speak to, pick this space over that space or pick this side versus that side. But what I can speak to is the mission. So if you want to get into this space, you think there is, you think it's something you like, you think there is immense opportunity to be made because this is a huge problem, solving energy access for 500 million plus. It's probably a billion when you think a bit of it globally and when you include those with, unreliable access as well. Then obviously you can see one, it's not going to be solved from one side only. So it's not a technical problem only. So if you're more technically inclined, go for it. I mean, there is a way on your technical inclination to solve it. So look at, doing internships in, engineering companies, for instance, that are developing these solutions, working with these mini grid developers, go develop some projects, go with them to the communities, etc. If your inclination is more with the numbers, you're a finance person, same thing. There is something as well in that regard that will help with the transition. So ultimately, I think it's not a thing for just engineers or lawyers or accountants. Just of where your calling is, I think we will all need to, do something, and there's be an opportunity for every skill set to be utilized in this transition. So even, let's say, for instance, your calling or your skill is in media, and all you can do is amazing infographics or TikTok videos or whatever. There's still a huge way you can, move the needle forward just by doing that. So your calling then is, how to use communication to help accelerate the energy transition. And quite frankly, I think you can name any calling, and I think there's a way to play your part with that in mind. So say first thing is just get started, do whatever it is that you're passionate about, and be curious. Once you're curious, you will definitely find, the opportunity or the space for you to grow within the energy transition journey.
Thank you so much for such an advice. And to everyone that's listening, in every conversation, I always like to pick out words that are like intriguing to me. And this last conversation was curiosity. And I would say curiosity is what will propel you. Like as someone that's also navigating my way into the industry also, I would say curiosity has actually made me stay and still propels me into developing myself. So thank you for that bit of advice. Curiosity is vital in the blooming in this space. So thank you so much for everyone listening from wherever you are and joining us on this journey through the lives of incredible African leaders in sustainable energy. If you enjoyed this series, don't forget to subscribe, to share, and to leave a review. Remember, your voice matters. Stay tuned for more at the Energy Africa, shaping Africa's energy future. Until next time, see you. Adios. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.